So, how many of you know that we have basically, while we have covered the first module, why I insisted on the data privacy, data security, data kind of everything around data, right? So we have covered the firewalls, we have covered the uh, SIEM solutions around that, we have covered the elasticity search, we have covered other security operation systems like what cyber analysts do on a daily basis. But one of the important aspect is the data security and what sort of tools we're going to use in the data security and the privacy within the security operation center. So we will also be looking into the fundamentals of the data security, and that would be covering a lot of policies and also what sort of systems would be protecting data exfiltration, right? So data exfiltration is basically you taking out huge chunk of data out of your systems. So that is flagged by DLP solutions, data leakage prevention solutions. So yeah, let's kickstart that. So the first thing first, again, the importance of data, which I always emphasized on, that we live in a digital age where we play with a lot of devices on a daily basis, handheld devices, your laptops, desktops, servers, and iPads, or you name it. So there are hundreds of devices, even IoT devices, the devices which are just connected through industrial systems, um, like Alexa and all these these are considered an IoT devices. They connect with an internet, and then they've got your doors opening, your lights switching on and off itself. You just give them the commands, or just doing it remotely. So all these sorts of devices are controlled by an internet, and there's some sort of a interface or medium which lies between them. But all of the things have their numbers, have their device addresses, have their MAC addresses, right? Which is converted to an IP address and then is connected to the internet. It's prone to an attack, right? Imagine somebody controls the traffic light signals. This is a classic attack, right? Especially around developed nations like US, they have had this a couple of times. They have had this reported, and there was a strong media coverage around that their infrastructure got hacked, and these sort of things would have been compromised. So the more things are connected to the internet, the more data is building up. Data is mining on a daily basis, right? So it's not, I'm talking about not terabyte, it's more than that, pentabyte, or even more than that, right? So a limitless data is building up, and huge amount of data is being stored on these devices, on the servers, in the data lakes, and also in various data centers across the region. Um, but what about the security? It comes down to that the data mining and data, because this is the crown jewel, right? So data is so important that we make money out of that data, right? In a sense that we can sell that data, we can make different product based on the data. We can basically enhance the existing products where data analytics play a big role, and thanks to AI, that it has got access to a huge amount of data. It touches the data nodes where a normal human being cannot really basically access those sort of data nodes, right? So trillions of data nodes, it just touches in a milliseconds and fetch the results, or fetch the desired outcome as per your requirements. So that's the beauty of it. But what if it goes in the wrong hands, right? So all your personal data, all your organizational data, or maybe the government agencies data, or maybe military, or some other sophisticated sensitive data would have been compromised. So what about that? So there, the data security comes in place. That the importance of data brings this field, right? So ever glooming, and this is ever evolving field. So yeah, so in basically that's where we are living now. This is the point in time. The more you think about it, the more you realize its importance. Um, and data privacy, it's getting, this concept is getting quite common now, from even from the general audience, the people getting understand that what's the importance of the data security is. How do we protect? How do we be cyber aware, cyber smart, and in terms of protecting our own data, right? Our organization's data, and so the more and more this concept is clarifies, the more sort of uh, the respect would be developed in that manner, that people would be start respecting the privacy, the data security's importance, and all these sort of policies around the organization or around other sectors. Um, one thing here, it's quite important that as the people understand, as similarly, the attackers, they do understand the value of the data, obviously, to exploit that, or to basically exfiltrate data from various nodes, various sources, and then they do various sort of things around that data, that they kind of they sell that data in the black market, on the dark web. They, whether it's in the form of credit cards, whether it's in the form of credentials, whether it's in the form of some some leaks, right? So that is where this attacks and defense games comes in. It plays a role there. So um, minimize that. So cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, as I said, that's another part of it, that where the data security comes. These are the things where we got to be careful of. There's malware attacks, hacking and data breaches, social engineering tactics, network vulnerabilities. It all revolves around the data, right? So if there is no data, these attacks wouldn't be survived. Like, so they do it for the sake of data, basically. Malware attacks is malicious, like softwares, viruses, worms. We already studied the threats and adversaries in previous lectures. They can infiltrate into the system, steal the data, and disrupt operations. So majority of them are there to steal the data. So that's where their focus is, basically. And various techniques, they use various tactics, and especially one of the tactic is very common and very important. This is social engineering. I always emphasize on social engineering. We have a separate set of whole topic is on social engineering, basically. That how we social engineered that emails, whether it's in the form of phishing, wishing, squishing, or there are so many forms of it. Even like text, voice phishing, email phishing, and also QR code phishing, right? So even in the webinar, if some of you have joined my webinar the other day, so I've shown the live demo on that QR code attacks, right? So I presented with the QR code to the audience, so with their explicit permission, and I already told them that this is gonna capture your front camera, basically capture your mugshot, and also there was another QR code which will be activating your mic, and there was a third one which would be bringing back your live location. So a lot of people they kind of um, they have sent they consent on that, and they have sent their pictures just by clicking on that link while they were opening it. So it created a kind of a connection between the device and my server, and that's where we are fetching all that information. These are the techniques, these are the tactics, right? I did tell them, but usually the attackers, they don't tell. They disguise that sort of thing in some sort of a link, picture, or anything. So they obfuscate that within that medium which they have sent you. And then when it triggers, it started their functioning as it is, which I've showed them. So data breaches are quite common nowadays. A lot of data breaches are happening while we are speaking. Um, and there are websites where you can check that live data breaches, right? I can show you right now. Um, Currently, there are like, let me change my screen. I'll show you. You can, okay, let's share. Okay. So this is the checkpoint live threat map, right? As you can see, this is quite obvious that on the map, you can see various regions are attacking to other regions, like US getting to some of the attacks getting to, there you go, the Brazil, and then it going back to Ireland, and intra-region attacks and all that. Well, this is a kind of a live sort of. I'm not sure how accurate it is right now, but this is what's the current picture of the live threats that's going on. So as you can see, the attacks on this day, it's quite a few. It's a big number, right? And this is, there are other threat maps which shows you around what sort of even attacks are going on there. So Yeah, as we speak, this game never stops, right? It happens, right? Some of them are just utilizing the bots, right? Automated techniques, which maybe your machine would have been compromised, and you don't even know that your machine is attacking to someone, because that is a compromised machine. So that's what we call the bot, right? So most of the distributed denial of service attacks, they utilize these bots. So the bots, all they do is they basically are the zombies, right? So they are the computers which are already victimized, and then they utilize those computers to attack the other sort of machines. So yeah, this is live demo. We're gonna go back to our slide, and there we go. So principles of data encryption and access control. As I said, we're going to learn in this one a lot of policies, principles around data encryption and access control policies as well somehow. So encryption, basically, as we have studied, that encryption is a method to encrypt the data, where you use several algorithms. There are several keys around that: private key, public key, and even SSL, TLS. They utilize the encrypted or cryptography within that. The encrypted data travels across the net, right? And that's the protocol we utilize there is TLS or SSL certificates or SSL traffic, encrypted traffic, the packets or the frames, right? And the algorithms they use are AES, RSA, and similarly some other algorithms there, right? So these are the algorithms they use to protect those protocols like TLS or SSL. Access control is a mechanism where we have to control the um, ingress and egress traffic, right? Incoming and outgoing traffic, or we place authentication or authorizations around those nodes, that any traffic comes into our organization would have been authenticated or authorized once in terms of getting access, right? I'm not talking about the other traffic which is controlled through the firewall and stuff, but this traffic is for solely for the purpose of gaining access. So if somebody wants to gain access to one system, they have to get an authentication and authorization. So these are the two different mechanisms around access control. So authorized is if you authorize that entity, if you authorize that personnel that to gain access to that, they're already on your list, they are the users, right? You authenticate them, right? So you authenticate via their password, via their hardware module, any sort of 2FA or 3FA, right? So these are the authentication mechanisms around that. So you got to authenticate them before granting them access to your resources. So that's where we have to enforce granular access permissions based on user roles. This has to be based on user roles, and we kind of restrict it that this specific user cannot really gain access to that resource, which is supposed to be accessed by certain level manager, manager's level position, and managers cannot access to the other sort of leadership level sort of portion, right, or share. So this is defined. So this is a proper, and this is being automated nowadays with tools like Delinea or CyberArk. So these are the ones which are commonly used in access controls, and they kind of they capture the session at the same time as well. So they capture the session, whatever you're doing there. For example, you are going to a server, right? You're accessing a server. You don't have to jump it RDP directly. You have to go through these tools, Delinea or CyberArk. And once you log into that tool, and through that tool, they will start capturing your session. So that for auditing purposes, what you have done on that server and who has got access to the servers and what sort of activities they were doing there. This has reduced a huge sort of attack uh, attack vectors, or I would say that's quite a phenomenal sort of advancement in the threat landscape, that they have these sort of tool sets. So you don't have to manually observe each and everything. For big organizations, is quite useful. Then they work on least privilege and what is least privilege first. So least privilege is basically that somebody who doesn't need to know. It's a need to know basis, right? Somebody doesn't need to know that what's in it or what that data is about. He will be denied access, or he will not be given an access only on a need to know basis, right? So least privileges, right? you can have an open access, and that's going to be a nightmare. Everybody has everybody's data and everybody's access, everybody's sort of shares. But this is a least privilege and a need to know basis, we call it. And then we implement multi-factor authentication, as I said, 2FA, 3FA, and a role-based access control. So if you are a manager, you got to access the HR data, then obviously you have nobody else would have that apart from the HR team and yourself. And an audit logging, basically it provides an audit logging to verified entities and track data access activities. So it's quite sophisticated, quite important sort of feature within cybersecurity. So encryption, access control, and then the secure storage. This is another thing. So all of these mechanisms are around data protection, right? So secure storage is basically where you securing your data, right? Obviously in a server, in a data center, that server is called your storage server. Or maybe you would be storing in a storage devices like hard drives, or maybe off location, like somewhere where you would be storing your data in a warehouse somewhere, right? So that is off network storage. Okay, so on a network storage on a cloud is something different than offline storage. So these are the two things. But both of them has got security mechanisms around it. Secure storage, they, for example, the warehouse one where the hard drives would be storing, there will be a physical sort of security there, right? They have the physical, they have the security guards, they have the fence around it, they have the cameras, they have the fire suppressing systems there, so that the data would not be destroyed by natural sort of phenomena or a natural disaster. So they got so many mechanisms to protect that data. Similarly, cloud or online storage, they have their own mechanisms. For example, access control. They have data encrypted, obviously, for various reasons. They have that other sort of data leakage prevention systems in place so that data would not be extracted in a bulk. So yeah, ex- full disk encryption, volume encryption, and secure cloud storage to safeguard information against physical theft or unauthorized access. That's what I explained already. The full disk encryption, obviously, to safeguard your disk data. Even the laptops, the company laptops you guys have, these are all encrypted devices, just in case, because even somebody wants to access the data, they can only remove it, but they cannot have access to that data, just in case if you lost your device. And then it comes down to monitoring and alerting. Fine, we have these controls, we have the access control, we have then encrypted the data, we have the secure storage as well. But what about monitoring, right? So again, SOC comes in play. We got to monitor that. As I said, might be some of you remember, I did talk about a file share system where we have a tool called Veronash that's only made for securing the file shares. Like if somebody touches the file, which they are not supposed to touch, and they haven't touched it for a long time, and all of a sudden they touched it, that creates an alert to SOC, right? That is the monitoring. That is an alerting. So that protects the data. In that uh, usually you wouldn't be knowing that, right? Unless it would be alerted through that system. You would be knowing that somebody is touching that data which you're not supposed to touch after a long, long time, right? So these sort of monitoring and alerting would have been placed to continuously monitor access patterns and security events, triaging alerts for suspicious activities, implement security information and even management solutions to detect and respond to potential threats in a real time. So SIEM solutions would be working there. All the data is pouring, all the event logs, all the your access control logs, everything is pouring into that stream just for the monitoring and alerting and auditing purposes at the same time. Okay. Then it comes down to product side information, personally identification, PII, right? Personally identifiable information, PII. So that's what we call in the cybersecurity terminology. This is very important. Your national insurance numbers, and in US they call it national security numbers. And you have your date of births, you have your last names, you have in Pakistan, there is no concept, or in third world countries, there are no concept at all of this information. They don't care about their personal information. They don't care about if somebody asks them, "Can we scan your passport, please?" And they proudly they send their passport self colored copy, especially they send them to, okay, there you go, and they save it in their device, and they can imagine they could get into the wrong hands. They can use it, but that's another story. Awareness, and it's quite a norm there, right? But in other countries, it has been taken seriously, and you cannot just provide your ID to anyone, anywhere, or you don't leave your fingerprints there. Even some people are so naive that they just kind of put their IDs on their social media accounts. Imagine. these sort of people, they traveling, oh look, I'm flying somewhere, and look, this is my passport in my hand, and they forgot to basically hide the important data within their ticket. Even the ticket barcodes can reveal a lot of information. Some people, they don't know that their boarding passes reveal a lot of information, their barcode on the boarding passes. So these sort of information reveals your date of birth, your last name, your obviously somehow other personally identifiable information. So this is very, very careful around that. And the data security guys, they know the worth, right? Or that attacker, they know the worth about it. So data classification, when we store any data, whether it's a word form, whether it's a a document, PDF or anything, we label it, right? Simple as that. We label it confidential, sensitive, public, private, or internal, whatever. Without that, it cannot leave your system. If somebody wants to transfer a file via email, it has to go through a DLP system, and DLP checks its label. And if it's a confidential information, bang, they block it, or they might have flagged it that this information is going outside the organization with a confidential label, and there you go. Even the internal documents cannot be shared just like that externally. So you got to be careful. If you want to send a document to external entity which is not even your vendor or something, then you got to label it public. And that's another thing. It still goes through the DLP system. They check whether it's the wrong label has been applied. That's another question might be popping in your heads, that what if somebody applies a wrong label and this still pass through the DLP checks? Yes, but DLP checks what sort of information is passed. If you manually sift through everything, each and every document, you can read it. If you are monitoring the DLP system, you can literally read that document, what's being sent out, right? So data classification, that wise data classification is very important because classify data based on sensitive and implement appropriate security controls. Sensitive and personal information requires robust protection by years. Then we encrypt the data and access control. We leverage the advanced encryption techniques and granular access permissions to safeguard sensitive data from unauthorized access or misuse. So then comes down to the privacy policies, that's under compliance requirements, that we have to, every organization has to define their privacy policies, that this is, they enforce those privacy policies on comprehensive to their data, to protect and to maintain the regulatory requirements and also the customer trust, right? Okay, compliance and regulatory requirements. Regulatory landscape, organization must navigate a complex web data privacy and security regulations such as GDPR. GDPR is basically in Europe. Basically, it is considered as a mandatory sort of thing where um, you cannot really pass on customers' data to another sort of company which is not based in the same region, or you have to get the permission from the subject whose data you are storing, basically. So GDPR has got so many clauses, so many conditions in that, how to basically share that data or store that data. And then we have got HIPAA and PCI-DSS. PCI-DSS usually applies in the financial sector, right? Your card in payment card industry. So PCI-DSS is widely used there. So these are basically, what are these? These are regulations, regulatory requirements, regulations, standards. So compliance is critical to avoid hefty fines and reputational damage. Just in case if somebody breaks those mandatory requirements, then they would get a heavy fine around that. And they also get their reputational damage, which is really, really important for any company running in a competitive market. Audit and reporting. Similarly, when these documents and policies been applied, they regularly been assessed through the security professionals, and they generate the compliance reports to demonstrate the adherence to that regulatory standards. Audits do come. The audits, like with other financial or any businesses, they hire some sort of big fours or maybe other auditing companies or accounting firms. But here in cybersecurity, yes, they do also have audits, but through cybersecurity. So the cybersecurity auditing team, one is external, one is internal. They do conduct their audits as well. Whether every control is in place, the control really works. That do you have a major breaches in the past? Do you, what sort of lesson learned and any other improvements you have shown there, and all sorts of things. So that they score them. They basically generate reports for them as well, and those reports being shared at the same time. Um, right. So moving forward, best practices for secure data storage and backup. Always encrypt your storage. Then it comes down to comprehensive backups. Always make the backups, very important. We disregard that because it takes a little effort there, but we don't really care. Sometimes we neglecting that sort of very important area. So comprehensive backups should be there, whether it's your server, whether it's your device, with computer, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's anything, any device, right? So, and then the physical security. Data centers are usually, they have a very strict physical security there as well, right? So they have man traps, they have security guards, they have biometrics, they have even retina scans there in most of the data centers nowadays. They have other measures in place for disaster recovery. They have measures for business continuity, and they also have for various sort of generators or electricity grids for uh, the power loss, right? So, and they also have other sort of connectivity features, very sophisticated connectivity features that they keep themselves connecting, because data is all about that. If somebody needs it, availability as well, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, these concepts comes there. So yeah, the best practices and the data storage and backup around that. As we are just looking at the backup, we just looking at the data basically. So data has it has to be backed up. It has to be stored with the proper storage facility in encrypted format, and the physical security around that. Um, then comes down the concept of incident response and disaster recovery planning. These concepts again revolve around the data. So every single concept revolves around the data around in data security, right? In cybersecurity, and that's what the crown jewel for hackers as well. They are after the data. They are after the stuff, but they are mainly around, mainly after the data. They need your data basically. Data is basically data is money, and data is kind of a new currency, digital world's currency basically. So incident identification, detect and analyze security incidents to understand the nature and scope of the threat, incident containment, incident eradication, recovery and restoration. Basically, these are the incident response concept we already studied there, and the disaster recovery planning, which is a part of the business continuity. And uh, uh, this also ensures that we restore critical systems and the data within time, right? Just in case if anything happens or an incident occurs. Emerging trends and technological in data security. There are a lot of new trends which are being in the market for like a blockchain, quantum cryptography. Quantum cryptography is basically quantum computing. You might have heard that there will be a very powerful computer who can break the cryptography, but don't know when they will be coming. It's maybe quite far still, the advancements. Maybe some people they think that the agencies they do have it, but publicly it's not been disclosed, but they do have the quantum computing. Blockchain everybody knows, obviously Bitcoin based on it, and NFTs and some other stuff. So and differential privacy and transforming data security. Um, so they have their own sort of privacy concerns. They have their own sort of data security concerns. These sort of like a blockchain or a quantum cryptography. So leveraging these advancements, organization can achieve unprecedented levels of data integrity, confidentiality, and privacy protection. So we, as we have to update with the technological trends, we have to update with the advancements in the technology. This is how we can compete. This is how we can preserve the data security, or we can maintain the data security to adopt these technological advancements. If we lag behind, obviously that's a red flag. Then you cannot really concentrate on protecting if you're not utilizing those technologies or the tool sets coming in the market every day. So what should be the takeaway from here? That we should prioritize data security, implement multi-layered defense, foster a security culture, stay agile and adaptable. How we foster security culture? By security training sessions and awareness session. How we implement multi-layered defense? To implement 2FA, 3FAs, and solutions like CyberArk, solutions like Delinea for access control. So these are all multi-layered defense. So multi-layers means that we have defense in depth, or a multi-layered, that we create layers of security on top of each other. Okay, like in physical security, you have a guard dogs, you have a security guards, then you have the fence, then you have that alarms, then you have that CCTV. So how many layers of security there, right? So a lot of layers. Similarly, in the digital one, it's different layers of security implement. Then we call it a defense in depth, or the multi-layer defense. And then we have to prioritize data security by obviously encrypting the data and looking into the storage sort of options around it.